From producer Guillermo del Toro and based off the novel The Quiet Boy comes a brand new supernatural horror directed by Scott Cooper. Thanks to my friends over at Searchlight for the screener, this is my review of Antlers. Set in a small Oregon town, we follow a school teacher and her police officer brother as they become convinced one of her students is harboring a supernatural creature. Taking the boy into their care, the teacher and the police officer soon become involved in a fight for survival against horrors beyond the imagination. But before I properly start with my review, I want you to let me know your thoughts on Antlers, anything and everything in the comments below. Start the conversation. That is the most important part. And while you're down there, make sure you click the subscribe button if you like what you see here. I was not one of the people that was very excited for this film. At one point, Guillermo del Toro was supposed to direct this, and that's what got me excited. And as soon as he stepped out, I had a little trepidation going in. He was still producing it, and that shows, and we'll get to it, but Scott Cooper is a good director in his own right, and he imbues this film with a lot of tense atmosphere. He creates a very somber, moody set piece that is consistent from beginning to end in that building of tension and creating these interesting relationships between characters. I found the characters themselves to be the most interesting and strongest part of this film as far as the writing is concerned. And it shows, again, not only in the writing itself, but the performances I thought were tremendous. I thought Plemons was great. Keri Russell herself, to no surprise, is fantastic as she has to carry a lot of this film, not only in terms of the emotional weight of her character, and I was very surprised by how much dimension she is given, but really she's the one that has to push this story forward, because if not for the characters, this story doesn't really have a lot of forward momentum. But young Jeremy Thomas is the one that surprised me the most. Put him up there with the rest of great child performances in the last 5 years, but especially in 2021, we're being blessed with the great child performances over and over again, and he's one of them again. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about Guillermo del Toro and his involvement as a producer. This film has great production design, as you expect from a Guillermo del Toro production. Not only in the big forests, the landscapes, the setting is very interesting and it lends itself naturally to a horror film, but also there's a creature in this film, and the creature is great whenever you can see it. And whenever you can see this creature, you can tell they went the practical way, and it's amazing to look at. It's frightening, it's weird, it's off this world, and it's very much Guillermo del Toro full-fledged into the design of this creature. But I was not terribly amused with Antlers, unfortunately. I think the characters are its strongest element, but even then, they're not the strongest characters. I think Antlers has a problem when it comes to holding itself back. It withholds so much information, and it's so worried about building tension, which it does, but it never really releases that tension. The film just ends. The film is building this tension throughout, but it's not really pulling back the layers as the story progresses. And because the film never releases this tension, it just builds it, but then never pays it off, really aren't any scares in this film. The film has this cool atmosphere and mood, but then it never does anything interesting with it. It just sets itself in terms of tone, and you accept it, and then you're waiting for something to actually happen, but it never really does. Thematically, the film is talking about trauma, and that is shown very well through Keri Russell's character progression throughout this film. But when it comes to applying itself to this little kid, Lucas, and this big creature and what it represents, and his backstory and how he's involved with the creature and whatnot, it doesn't really stick the landing. It doesn't really feel like it has an impact, unfortunately. It's also weird that the film comes across as if it thinks it's an art house horror film, but it really isn't. There's nothing in the writing that justifies that approach, but it always feels like the film has all these innuendos but it really doesn't have it. The writing just is never there to back up all these interesting themes that the film presents but never develops. It never explores them further or has anything interesting to say about them. Which became frustrating after a while because Keri Russell and her brother, played by Jesse Plemons, were characters I cared about and wanted to know more about their relationship, and their relationship is probably the best developed thing in the film, but everything else around them is just muddled and becomes uninteresting because it doesn't evolve through the film. Even its third act feels mundane, it feels safe, and it feels uneventful because, again, it's just not surprising at all. The film just goes through these beats that you expect exactly for it to go in as soon as the film begins. It has a great premise and interesting themes, but the tension that is generated, the atmosphere that it is created just never justify the fact that these ideas are never explored or developed. I'm giving Antlers a C-. It's a shame, as at first I was not excited for Antlers, but as it started I saw a little bit of promise in that, but then it just never really paid off. But those are my thoughts on Antlers. I want to know what you thought about it. Let me know in the comments below, anything and everything. Just start the conversation because it's the most important part. Thank you so much for watching. You are the best. I'll be back very soon with more reviews and I hope to see you in those. And so until the next one, love each other and love the movies.